Welcome to
I'm not getting anything.
Live and local from the Business 1110 studios with managing partner and certified investment management analyst Blaine Douglas, along with managing partners Bill and Bruce Angel. In the Money is a presentation of the Angel Group at Old Course Investment Partners, helping Houston focus on investing, the markets, and personal finance. Taking your calls at 713-785-1817. In the Money is on the air.
Good morning, Houston, and welcome. Welcome to a Monday morning special edition of In the Money radio show. This is a special edition because the market's being closed today. Bill and Bruce and Blaine are taking the day off. My name is Joe Stiles. I am a residential mortgage lender, and I'm honored to be sitting in on the show today. And we're going to be talking about, as a theme for the show, starting your own business. And we've got some stellar guests for the show today. Mitch Gaspard of the Gaspard Law Firm and Eric Standlee of American Prudential Capital. Welcome, you guys. Glad to have you with the show.
Good morning, Joe.
Good morning, Joe.
In our theme for today, starting your own business, we want to be a inspiration, a resource to those that are out there in the marketplace that are contemplating going from a job desk job into maybe starting or owning or acquiring their own business. And there's any number of reasons why, and I brought some details today that we're going to get into in the show today. But first, I'd like Mitch and Eric to introduce themselves a little bit. Eric, tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and your company.
Thank you very much, Joe. I appreciate it. Sounds like we got some motorcycles in the background there.
Yeah,
I don't know what that is.
I heard those, and I wasn't sure if that was coming through the board or not.
My name is Eric Standlee. I'm with American Prudential Capital. I'm a principal in the company. We're a 23-year-old funding company, and we like to fund B2B companies. We like startups, acquisitions, and growing companies. And other than that, I like to play around with a network called In Houston that I started in 2008, which is now about 20,000 members, and we're spreading out all over the world, actually. So.
Wow. Didn't know that. Well, obviously, financing is one of the components that we're going to be talking about today on starting your own business. Mitch, tell us a little bit about yourself and your practice.
Yes, sir. I have my own office at basically Highway 6 and Katy Freeway here in town. I got my engineering degree from mechanical engineering from Texas A&M, my MBA from Indiana, and my law degree from the University of Houston. I've been practicing law going on 37 or 38 years. I offer legal services and contracts, general business matters, real estate, consumer matters for individuals and businesses, also wills, probate, and occasionally I help clients collect some money that's owed to them.
Glad to have you guys here. Thanks so much for coming out. Today, in our conversation, starting your own business, we invite your calls, 713-785-1817. For those that would like to get on the show via email, joe@joestyles.com is the easy way to do that. joe@joestyles, or call in at 713-785-1817. We invite your insight into your business experience and things you would do and not do again. Let me open the show first with a trivia question to inspire the listeners to participate in the show. Houston has a number of perhaps slogans or nicknames. You can readily think of a few of them: Bayou City, Clutch City, Space City. So call in with what you think are some of the previous nicknames for the city of Houston. And in doing so, every caller will get a Team Leaders Toolkit from Linda Stiles, autographed for each of their callers. 713-785-1817. Call in with your nicknames for the city of Houston. Now, following the theme to starting your own business, let me read a couple of headlines, and then I'm going to get Mitch and Eric to respond. The first headline comes out of yesterday's Houston Business Journal, and the headline is this is the Houston Chronicle. The headline reads, "Slowly but surely, local economy heals." Now, as a residential mortgage lender, I pay attention to home sales, home values, things like that. Let me throw out some statistics. November of 2011, number of home sales, 3,973. A year ago, November of 2010, 3,568. That's 4,000 more. Home prices, November 2011, almost 155,000. A year ago, November 2010, 151,000. So you see the positive aspects of the local economy, and there are others. Now, an opposing headline, and I'm going to make a point here and show you, and then get our guest to respond. This is from the Houston Business Journal, the week of January 13th through the 19th. Business selling prices declined in the fourth quarter 2011. Now, you guys, can there be a better time than starting your own business?
Well, Joe, this is Eric, and I think for sure this is a really good time. Some of those indicators are lagging indicators, some of those indicators are leading indicators, and, part of what we're going to see in the economy right now is this kind of Eric's crystal ball, if you want to see this. But if you don't want to, just close your ears or whatever, because this is, just my opinion. But, we're going to see different industries. It's almost like a whole bunch of roller coasters lined up across each other. And some of them are going to go down, some are going to go up, and there's going to be this kind of rocking around for the next, 5 to 10 years. The bankers are saying 10 years, by the way, for the economy to come around. So one of those indicators you see is people buying houses. Well, in Houston, that could be because there's a huge influx of people from Canada or, from New York City or something like that, where they're getting jobs here that they couldn't get somewhere else. So that's it can be a false indicator. But then the valuations of businesses going down, I can explain that in detail. And the reason they're going down right now is because every day 1,000 new people hit retirement age. Now, not all of those are going to be business owners, and not all of them are going to retire either. But that's a huge number of people who have the opportunity to sell their business if they've been if they've got one business that their family's running and they don't want to keep doing it, they're ready to retire. It's time for them to get out, and that means there's a large growing number of business owners who want to sell their companies. And on a daily basis, 1,000 people hitting retirement, that means on a annual basis, that's a huge number.
That is a huge number, and it's being a boomer myself, it's an interesting statistic. For me personally, this is almost like catching the second wind, and I've definitely gotten my antenna up for opportunities that might be out there.
Well, and what it does is, because there's an influx of companies for sale, what that does is it drives the price of the companies down. There's more
of them, right?
More sellers competing for the dollars that the buyers have, and there's less buyers, to be honest. There's this huge shrinkage in that. In the normal range, in the $1 to $10 million range, for companies is a shrinkage in the number of dollars out there for competing for those companies. So that means the prices are going to go down, standard economics.
So if you were a business buyer, then you certainly want to do your due diligence.
Oh, sure.
And that means financially, operationally, compliance. That seems to be the biggest growing department in just about every company these days, especially in the mortgage industry that I see firsthand. Mm-hmm. Now, in doing it, we've got two scenarios where you do an acquisition of an existing business and you're up and running, or starting something from scratch. And in those avenues, we see a lot of where people have taken an experience in a certain industry, look perhaps within the industry and see a niche or see a opportunity within the company, maybe that they were outsourced or downsized from, and then go back either as a contractor or a service provider inside of that company. Mm-hmm. In some of your business clients, Mitch, do you see things going on like that?
Well, Houston is a very favorable business climate. It's favorable from the point of view of organizing new businesses, or even favorable for mergers or conversions of existing businesses into other forms of businesses. They say in New York that if you can make it in New York City, you can make it anywhere. Well, I think if you can make it in Houston, you can make it anywhere. So nowadays, people have opportunities. All you have to do is just organize yourselves properly, take advantage of these opportunities, work hard, and you should succeed.
Now, we've got a caller on the line. Roger, I believe, is with us now. And Roger, are you there? Now, Roger is a ringer that I asked to call the show just for the listening audience. And I guess it's kind of a disclaimer. Roger's background has been in turnaround management. And I've known Roger for a number of years, and he's been across multiple industries. Tell us a little bit about, if, in your experience, Roger, if you're looking at an existing business, where should you start? Now, a little interesting background also on Roger. He now is a professor at U of H teaching entrepreneurship. So he walks the walk that he has talked over the many, many years that I've known him. Some of the stories that background, where do you think are the biggest potholes for a person to come in, Roger, into an existing business after doing some due diligence? longer than the break. Okay? I think all of your point is showing how critical that executive summary is, but just to grab some attention. Is that a fair statement? Roger, we're up against a break. I am so grateful for your call in. We want to hang on to you as a resource for those prospective business acquisition people. Thanks so much for the call in.
We're good.
Joe Stiles builds trust by serving as a resource to home buyers and homeowners. With your mortgage or real estate questions, contact Joe at joestiles.com.
I did that on purpose. He's out of that business.
1414 and learn what mortgage financing.
I definitely want to talk about.
we got art on the phone also already.
381-1414. NMLS
I definitely want to talk about
If you're an experienced financial advisor wanting to take your
he kind of went into the business plan part of it, but there's more to talk about.
Looking to add investment professionals dedicated to serving their clients utilizing the independent broker-dealer LPL Financial. Contact Old Horse Investment Partners to learn more about joining their firm as a financial advisor. Call 713-300-9828.
That's one of those, make your point to them personally, not over the air, because it cheapens your service.
When's the last time you talked to a banker? At Allegiance Bank, Texas.
But your point's valid.
Taken for granted. Locally owned, the Allegiance Bank team brings vast experience and commitment to your success by providing you, the business owner, with access to a decision maker today or sooner. Call Allegiance Bank, Texas, 281-894-3245, or log on to allegiancebanktexas.com. An equal opportunity lender, member FDIC. This is the sound of a brand new outdoor grill being hurled off a 20-story building.
Did they tell you what the alarm
stylish glass coffee table.
We're doing a fire alarm test.
An electric guitar.
Yeah, I'd hate to have to abandon ship.
Yeah, I was wondering about that too. Like, I want to know what we do. Leave or do we stay?
Do you have like a 20-minute play that you can just plug in?
I didn't know if that had anything to do with that motorcycle.
Energy Star light fans or Energy
That
Star
was crazy. It came
appliances,
through
then you can
clear.
save hundreds of dollars a year.
It's almost like there was a mic downstairs.
Got your eye on. Or this to the treadmill on your wish list. Or this to the shiny new bike your kid's been asking for.
So, Mitch, do you do?
Saving energy
Hey, Mitch,
saves you money.
do you do formations as well?
Brought to you by
Do you do formations as well?
Here we go.
I help people with business.
Okay.
Good morning, Houston. Welcome back. You are listening to a special edition of In the Money radio show. My name is Joe Stiles, residential mortgage lender extraordinaire, sitting in for Bill and Bruce and Blaine because the market being closed today, they've got the day off. We've got a trivia question for all the listeners today. As you're driving into your commute or listening on your PC, inthemoney.net is streaming live. 713-785-1817 is the call-in number. Today we are talking about starting your own business, and the trivia question for today, what are some of Houston's nicknames over the past several years? And I've got a list, and it came from the Houston Business Journal. Call in, 713-785-1817. We're taking your emails at joe@joestiles.com. Now, we've got Art on the line now, and one of the issues in either acquiring or starting your own business is the planning process. Where do you get educated about a specific business or industry? And one of the best places to go is HCC. Art, are you with us? Tell us a little bit about what HCC is doing to help the entrepreneur of today. I don't know if you were listening at the time, Art. Roger called in earlier, and he was talking about how critical that executive summary. Now, I was a part of as a mentor to the business plan competition for the first 2 years of existence, and some of the people putting together these business plans were really, really creative. One that sticks in my mind was a young lady, a student at HCC. She was going to, she put together a business plan about honey, selling, developing, starting her own beehives and selling honey in the local area market. I thought, now that is creative. So part of this HCC program is the educational part. And they actually, the students, when they do put together their business plan, if I remember correctly, present, if they are selected winners, to actually venture capitalists for funding. That is a huge resource, and I do know for a fact that HCC is just heavy, and I think they've even put together Goldman Sachs some funding. Talk a little bit about that quickly, Art. Now that would fit in maybe a section under marketing and branding. Is that correct? Okay, great. All right, thanks so much for calling in and sharing the insight on HCC's program. Appreciate your time. Now, Mitch, Eric, some of the issues with starting a business is the structure. Are you LLC, LP, on and on and on and on? There's probably, it seems like a dozen, but there's probably half a dozen, 8 or 9, something like that. Mitch, is that part of what you can do in your legal practice to help somebody determine the advantage of one over the other? And I would assume there are resources also from an accounting CPA type standpoint that you have access to that helps that formation. Is that a fair statement?
Texas has a number of opportunities to organize different business entities. Choosing the business entity that best suits what your business plan is trying to accomplish is important. There's a wealth of information through the Secretary of State website and also through the Comptroller's office. There are forms available online that can be utilized online to organize businesses. However, as the Secretary of State advises you, these forms are the minimum requirements. The minimum requirements to organize a business may be perfectly acceptable to you and your business partners, or they may not be the right way to go. I can give you an example. I have a real estate client of mine. He has a rather large brokerage company here in town. He approached me some years ago. They wanted to organize some sort of a company where the people working for the company could put together some money and the company could invest in real estate. We thought about real estate investment trust, but they were way too complicated and horrifically expensive to organize, so we started looking at the limited liability company structures. By studying the law, we were able to design a limited liability company that is functioning very well a number of years after it was created. It's sort of a special type of entity. We were able to use provisions of the Limited Liability Company Act to accomplish what they wanted to accomplish, and the company today is up and running and doing well. It's very important to consider the different types of businesses, entities that you can form, and to try to select the business entity that best suits your needs.
In addition to, in the formation stage, part of the legal requirement, you have to have a name. You have to register the name, be it a DBA or whatever it may be. You have to get a tax ID number. You have to register for the local state and local taxes. There are any number of licenses and permits, and not to leave out HR, to have all of those issues down before you open the door. So, I mean, you don't go into these things blind, and you need to have resources available. We're going to take a short break here in just a second, and we're going to talk about financing. That's always a big, big component. We've got a trivia question today. What are some of the nicknames of the city of Houston over the years? 713-785-1817, or your emails to joe@joestiles.com. You are listening to a special edition of In the Money with a theme of starting your own business. We'll be right back.
For some, success is money in the bank and a big house on the hill.
How many minutes will we break?
Retiring early.
How long is this break?
College or simply having ample time to spend
2 to 3 minutes. 3 minutes.
However you
Jason, 2 minutes.
We at
break.
Old Course
You have
Investment
one,
Partners can help equip you with the financial resources you need to work toward your goals.
Time to get a coffee,
LPL
think?
Financials
Going 2.5 minutes now.
If you run quick, because you got the next piece, man.
As well as
you know,
allocation strategies and automatic rebalancing. For more information,
I can make it, but
consultation. Call the Angel Group at 713-300-9800.
A lot of people, I think, are using these online forms the Secretary of State has available.
Write this number.
And that may be perfectly fine. Then again, it may not,
713.
because today give you only the minimum.
Right, and what we're going to look at is, whether or not there's room in there for us to get into funds, and what an angel's going to look at, how's that going to look for him when he's buying parts of it. If it's a member organization, how does that look for him? It's actually better to set it up as a stock organization if you're going to bring in investors.
Remember at the end when I give you the time, the 2 minute, the 1 minute, and when I start that music, the closer, it's only 15 seconds long.
That's 281.
I'm going to bring up this point about helping evaluate. So, play off of that.
If a headache has ever thrown a painful wrench into your plans,
Is that
you're
next
not
week?
alone.
You're going to talk about financing.
A survey conducted by the National
Yeah,
Headache Foundation
all in that.
found 59% of respondents miss work or other activities because of headaches at least once a month. But there is hope. The
I think
NHF offers 12 tips for a headache.
It's good that you're giving a whole bunch of, things you should look out for, but I think we ought to encourage them to not be overwhelmed by it too, A lot of people are going to be listening and going, oh yeah, too much, I don't want to know.
And prepare for your day the night before to make the morning rush.
There are people out there who can help you get this done, and you don't need to worry so much about it. Just make sure you dot all your I's and cross all your T's.
The power of deep breathing. For the complete list of tips or for more information
I started
about headaches, call the
three
National
new
Headache
companies
Foundation
from last
at 88-NHF-5552
last year.
or visit www.headache.org.
I ran into something a few years ago.
30 seconds.
Hi, I'm Mia Hamm. As a professional soccer player, I know how rewarding sports can be and how quickly injuries happen. So I've teamed up with the American Association of Orthodontists to ask athletes to play it safe. With my years of training, I know what it takes to become an expert, and orthodontists do too. They're the experts who help people obtain healthy, beautiful smiles. Wear mouth guards, face masks, and helmets to prevent injuries. Keep smiling and visit braces.org.
Good morning, Houston. You are tuned in to a special edition of In the Money radio show. Today's theme, starting your own business. I am Joe Stiles, sitting in for Bill and Bruce and Blaine, and we invite your call today, 713-785-1817, or your emails, joe@joestiles.com. Now, we've been talking about starting your own business, and if it is an existing business, there are several ways to go into that and in a specific industry if you were a novice to that industry. Some of those might be to hire yourself out as a part-time employee to gain some of that experience. You could go into that industry's customers and interview them for opportunities or niches, or talk to somebody that's actually been there. Now, we've heard from Art and Roger about the value of business plan and how critical the various components are. Art talked about resources that are available. We've thrown out some of the operating structures, the LLC, LP, where do you go? You're talking to two of our guests here today that are great resources for business formation or acquiring a business. And financing is no stranger to that process, Eric. How could American Prudential Capital be a resource in that process?
Oh, well, thank you. Structure is very important in a company that we're looking at. Our buyers typically use us to buy 2 to 10 companies in an industry. They may go into, for instance, engineering services in the oil field and go buy two or three companies that are, $5 to $10 million in revenues. And evaluating the structure is very important for us. We need to look at it because if we're going to finance the deal, we need to make sure that there's room for us to be in there. We're not taking equity, but that buyer is taking over the equity, so they need to know and understand where to look for where the equity is. That might be on the tax returns. It might be in the formation documents. There may be notes in the articles that change that. And you know, an LLC can be formed and then changed into a C corp down the road for tax purposes. So that all affects who owns what and how much of it, and you got to understand all that before you buy a company. And especially using our kinds of funds, you're going to take over all of the ownership when we fund a deal.
And it is always, in my opinion, better to have a second set of eyes.
Oh, yeah.
Be it the financing source, the legal source, your marketing source. It just is a great resource to have a second pair of eyes.
And it's important to go into a relationship like that asking questions and being humble, because if you go in there telling them how it's going to be, 9 times out of 10, it's not going to work for you. You're going to go into a banker and tell him how you want the loan structured. He's going to say, well, that's great. There's probably a bank who wants to do that for you somewhere else.
And not them. Now, it's always a little nerve-wracking, I guess, for an acquisition. And so how do you know you've unearthed all of the flies in the ointment type thing?
For our buyers, they can rely on our expertise. We've been in business for 23 years, funding companies and funding acquisitions. And so we have a really, really smart team that looks at it. And actually, in 2 weeks on an acquisition, we can tell whether or not we want to do the finance on it, and then we can tell whether or not we would, if it were us, whether we would buy the company or not. We can't tell the buyer, you know, they can make their own decision. We can tell them, you know, what it would be for us. And the buyer can make that decision on their own. That
is an interesting point, Eric. What you just said about, is this something we would do if we were acquiring? Mm-hmm. That is the exact same type of philosophy I use in some of my home buyers, homeowners that are talking about refinancing. I preface my comments, is this something I would do? Mm-hmm. And it's just an example of having that resource. And I would highly guess that the legal aspect or the structure of a company that you might be assisting with the financing on would be equally critical, like what Mitch has been talking about.
Oh, yeah. You know, somebody like Mitch is very important. You have to have somebody make sure that the structure is correct and that it's going to work for the whole deal.
You brought up an interesting stat earlier in the show about 1,000 boomers are reaching retirement age just almost, I guess it was per day,
mm-hmm,
correct?
Per day, yep.
Now, that is both a opportunity as a buyer or as a seller. Mm-hmm. So I brought an example from Houston Business Journal from January 5th. This is a guy that saw one of these lawn trimmer type businesses, and he acquired that company and then turned around and started looking for sources to manufacture his business, some of which are domestic and some of which are overseas. And you talk about hitting a home run. 2010 revenue, $2.7 million. He's got, it's a manufacturer, distributor of aftermarket lawn trimmer heads. There are story after story after story of opportunities out there. What kind of things are you seeing?
Well, actually, I'm also a buyer. We use our own funds to buy companies, and I'm looking at a deal right now where it's an IT company in Austin. The owner is actually younger than me. I'm 41, so I don't know exactly how old he is, but he's younger than me, so it's important to understand it's not always boomer selling. He wants to sell because he's more interested in real estate. His company's averaging right under $1 million a year in revenue. And it's a little bit small for what I want to do, but when we looked at it, it was set up as a absentee owner, which actually makes it really nice for us to move in because I don't have to move to Austin to run the company. It's already set up the way that I can run it from here. And so I've got people here in Houston that would run that for me. And it's an example of some of the deals we're seeing. On the upside, on the larger side, we're seeing $10 million oil field services companies. where the owners, the husband and the wife, have been in business for 10, 20, 30 years sometimes, and they're just tired. They want to get out, and their kids don't want to follow them. Their kids saw how hard it was for them to build that business, and they don't want to work that hard. And so they're looking at some of their employees saying, well, could I sell it to him? But that guy's not got a lot of net worth, and so how do you get out of a company like that? And so we're actually stepping in as buyers in those cases as well, and looking at those deals.
Now, we've been talking about finding resources. Before the show ends, tell the listening audience how to get in touch with each of you so that if they do have questions after the show, they can get in touch.
Sure. Well, you can find out everything about Eric Standlee if you want to. Go to gist.com/Eric Standlee. You can also go to my website, ericstanlee.com. Eric Standlee spelled EricStandlee. So that'd be gist.com/Eric Standlee with no spaces.
Mitch, how can listeners get in touch with you?
I'm a one-man shop. My number is 281-558-1234. That's 281-558-1234. You call me unless I'm in conference or on the phone or down the hall. I will answer the telephone. I keep my own files and I do all my own work. I think my clients appreciate the opportunity to have their attorney available to them when they need to utilize my services.
Availability is critical, and that's the mantra that I use in my business also. And I'm grateful for you guys getting up today on MLK Day and coming into the radio show and participating in the Starting Your Own Business show.
Thanks for having us.
Forgot to mention that most of my clients nowadays communicate by email. About 80% of my communication is by email. The other would be conferences or telephone calls. But email is a big driving force nowadays.
Well, it definitely is that. You've been listening to a special edition of In the Money radio show. My name is Joe Stiles. Glad to be sitting in for Bill and Bruce and Blaine. I am reachable at 281-381-1414 or joe@joestiles.com with your mortgage financing with style questions. You'll hear from Bill and Bruce and Blaine on tomorrow's show. Tune in then. Thanks for being with us today.
The opinions voiced in this program are for general information only and not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which investments may be appropriate